Good evening. My name is Seth Rosenstein, and I am a senior product manager at Grubhub. And today I'm going to talk about how Grubhub uses data to prioritize product roadmaps. So first, a little bit about myself. I live in Philadelphia today. I have my 3 beautiful children and my wife. We're originally from Minnesota, so I love the Twins. I love going to baseball games. I love the Vikings, and that's just my personal background. But more my professional background is that I've always been an analyst by trade. I worked at Ricoh as a buyer, analyzing shipping footprints, making sure our printers and our toners were shipped to our clients on time, and making sure they were pulling from the right warehouse. I worked at Macy's as an inventory planner, where I was responsible for making sure that my 11 stores had the right feeling, the right inventory, colors, all those things that speak to the local customers of those stores. So my downtown Philadelphia store had a much different color and scheme pattern and quality of goods than the store that I had down the shore in New Jersey. Eventually, I ended up at Zoomer Delivery as the head of business intelligence. And at Zoomer, it was a startup. We were a third-party delivery service, so we were like Uber for restaurants. And what we did is I started as the 50th person, and we had very little reporting tools. So I worked with my data engineer, Chris Heinzman, if anybody went to his talk earlier today. And we basically built out the whole data infrastructure of Zoomer, and then also the reporting structure on top of that. So we spent a lot of time looking at what do restaurants really care about in terms of metrics, delivery times, and really creating everything that we needed from top to bottom by giving charts and data to our CEO for funding rounds and presentations, all the way down to the managers in the field to make sure that they had the data to make sure the regions were operating efficiently. We got acqui-hired by Grubhub, and that's where I've been for the last 5 or 6 years now. And as a product manager, I'm responsible for making sure that not only do I have the data and finding the problems that we have in the data, but also now solving those problems. So it's been the first time where I've not just built a dashboard or did a write-up and said, here's a problem and hand it off to somebody else to go fix. I now own finding that problem and also fixing it. The area that I own in product management is the ETAs at Grubhub. So I'll be spending most of my time today talking about how the ETAs influence everything. So the agenda for today is I'm going to talk about ETAs at Grubhub, give a brief overview of our ETAs. I'll talk about how we develop our roadmaps. And then I'll talk about a case study where we had an interruption that came into my roadmap and how we dealt with that. And then talk through some of the success factors in that case study. And then also as we build the roadmap at Grubhub. So first, the overview of the ETAs at Grubhub. As a diner, which I hope most of you are Grubhub diners, or all of you, that you've seen our ETAs and it helps you decide whether or not you're going to order from a restaurant. So that's what we call search. So that's where you see that ETA, you see a 30-minute ETA on the right side for every one of our restaurants, and you make that decision. That's quick enough. That's the type of food I want. I'm going to go make that purchase decision. Then we show it to you on the menu page. So as you're building your order, adding more items, you can see your ETA sometimes will go up because you're adding a lot of items or something that takes a long time to make. We're cognizant of that information. We want to keep the diner informed of everything that's going on so they have the right expectation. Then you check out, we'll show it to you again, and then we'll also keep you updated with tracking, saying that we're 20 minutes away, or that we have notifications that say, hey, something's going on, the restaurant's taking a bit longer, or we couldn't get a driver as quickly as we thought, or maybe we're going faster, and we'll give you those notifications all the way up to the point where we have a driver that's about 3 minutes away. We're going to say, hey, your order's almost there. Get ready to go get it. So those are all our diner-facing ETAs, and they're very important to set the expectation for the diner, but we also use our ETAs internally as well. So places that we do that would be like our restaurants. So we need to inform the restaurants, hey, here's an order that has come in. We expect you guys to make the food in 20 minutes, and we'll have a driver there when the food is ready. They can then tell us they need more or less time, but the initial start of that negotiation comes from our ETAs and my team that is building that out to make sure that we're all aligned on when that handoff should happen at the restaurant. We also use it for our drivers. It's very important for our drivers to be paid for their orders, and we want them to be paid as best as we can, and that's all based off of our ETAs. Sometimes we overestimate, sometimes we underestimate, but that all works out sort of in the wash, and we're pretty good with estimating for our drivers. This is the amount of time we think it's going to take, so therefore we're going to pay you so many dollars to take that order. Our dispatch service also uses our ETAs. That's probably one of the most crucial spots in our ETAs. So we've made a promise to the restaurant we'll be there in 20 minutes. We've made a promise to the diner that we'll be there in 30 minutes. And now we need dispatch to then understand where are all my drivers, where are all my open orders, and how can we make that 20-minute pickup and that 30-minute drop-off actually work. So they're taking in all our ETAs in real time and calculating all the different options we have for our orders and getting them assigned to the right driver. And finally, our care team has our ETAs as well. So in the unfortunate event that an issue does come up, you can call care and they'll be able to see when the order is placed, the original ETA, what's happening right now with the order, and they get that information in real time as well. So then moving on, the question becomes, that's a lot of places that our ETAs are used. How do we actually make them? So we put data into pretty much every aspect of our ETAs, and this is a very high-level overview of our ETAs because I won't give away too much of our secret sauce. But the first part is we have this food prep model. And it looks at a lot of information that we gather from the restaurant, the type of food that there is, the amount, the size of the order, and all these things that it's looking at historically, how did they perform and what is that new order coming in? And then that gives us an output of how much we expect the restaurant to take to make that order. At the same time, we're calculating what is the drive time to that restaurant? What does our driver scenario look like? Do we have a lot of drivers, not a lot of drivers right now? And can we predict roughly how long it will take the driver to get to the restaurant? We're trying to align those two times to match each other. So that way the driver is walking right into the restaurant the same time that your pizza is coming out of the oven. So it's hot and fresh. There's no wait time and the driver's in and out of the restaurant, and makes that handoff time. So that's where we have the food pickup or handoff. And that's that transaction between the restaurant and the diner or the driver. They're checking to make sure they have all your drinks, your silverware, all the items that were ordered. And then they drive to the diner and hand it off. In all those phases, we're looking at how do we perform historically, and then how does that historic match the current order that we have in front of us. So there's a lot of data that we're looking at. We have a lot of ML models in each one of these stages to make sure that we're doing everything appropriately for our diners and make sure we set the right expectations. So that's how we build our ETAs. So now how do I make the ETAs better? Because that's essentially my job. My job is to make sure that my development team understands where we have problems and how to go, and the idea is to go fix that problem, and work with the business to understand that we know what's going on in our regions and make sure that we are getting orders through the system and make sure that we're setting the right expectations for the diners. So we build a roadmap to do that. And when we're building this roadmap, the first thing we do is identify a problem. So if we're looking, I will cut through data with many different ways, many different directions, and I'll identify a problem. Or I'll have people come up to me with a problem, whether it's one of my executives or one of my friends say, hey, Seth, this order went wrong. It was really late. You guys screwed up. And then that's something that I'm going to go look into and figure out what was the real problem behind it. I'll take all those problems and then I'll size that opportunity. So maybe my friend's order is something that happened. It was really weird, a one-off situation. I might not worry about that. Or I could see that his one-off situation is actually a big deal that happens to half of our orders. So then what I'm going to start doing is saying which of these problems that have been identified need to actually go be solved, or where should they live in the priority of my roadmap? Should I solve my friend's problem today, or it can be pushed off because it's a smaller problem? Then we discover solutions. So I do a lot of brainstorming with my development team, with my business partners, working with finance, and even talking to my friends that have those problems and figuring out like what went wrong for you and how can I fix that? Again, it's another place where I start cutting through a lot of data. So we size the opportunity. How much of that opportunity can I fix with the solutions that we are doing discovery on? So if we see that there's something that's impacting half of our orders as the size of the opportunity, and my solution only fixes 1% of those orders, that might not be the best solution. Or I could have a solution that fixes all those orders, but will take me 2 years to build, or take my team 2 years to build. That's also probably not the best thing. So as we're weighing those solutions, it's a mix between how big of an impact can we make and how long is it going to take us to make that impact. And we're weighing that constantly. Then we'll build the product. So I'll take those solutions that we worked on and I'll put them into requirements for my tech team. And then they go ahead and they build the product that we're working on, or the feature or the different workflow. And then we actually have the product. And then at the last point, it becomes very data heavy again, where we measure the results. And that's something that is always important that we do. We want to make sure that our outcome, matched what we said in the size of the opportunity and the solutions that we discovered. So we're making sure that, oh, we did solve the whole problem. Maybe we out exceeded our expectations, or maybe we underperformed and we need to go work on it again and have another iteration. So how do we do that at Grubhub? We do it through a quarterly planning process where the product managers will get together or work individually, and we'll start with a very high level business goal. That usually comes from the very top. So for me, that goal is, how do we get less late orders? They're looking at me as the owner of ETAs to figure out, how can I predict better, or how can I expose the information to other teams to say, this is something we can't predict, we got to solve that as a behavioral issue or something else that's going on that we want to fix. But that doesn't really give us the right way to talk to each other or come up with ideas or do that discovery process. So we need to frame the opportunities. So if I'm looking at, how do I get less late orders, it's really hard to break that down to we should do this or we should do that. But if I frame it out into a more tangible idea or a tangible problem, again, sizing the opportunity, that's where we can start to have those real discussions. So we're going to look at, where are the goals missed and how big are those misses. So one thing I'll talk about is that we send offers to our drivers, and the drivers have the ability to either accept or reject our offers. And when they accept an offer, then they're going to go pick up the order, go to the restaurant, deliver it to the diner. If they reject it, it goes back into our dispatch system for the next driver, and they'll make an offer to a different driver. One of the things we see a problem with is if we get 3 rejections, we have a higher percentage of late orders. So that's our opportunity. That is a frame that I can make that with the data. I can see these are the orders that have 3 or more offers, and they are late more often. And then how big is that miss? That's where I'm starting to say that this is a big problem, because when we do that, we're missing a lot of the time. And that's something that we need to go fix and have solutions for. So we'll take that framed opportunity and we'll see how do our solutions match the goal. So if we come up with a list of 5 or 6 or 15 ideas to go fix that opportunity, we're always making sure, does the opportunity go back to the original goal? And are we getting a big enough chunk, or is it a quick win or something that will make that opportunity be something that we want to add to our roadmap? Now, that's something we do quarterly. There's always things that come in between quarters that we want to prioritize or deprioritize our roadmap for. And that's what I'll talk about with our case study. The big interruption. They always come up. Somebody has a new issue, something is found, and that's where we need to, as the product manager, we need to look at, is the data that we're seeing in this interruption worthwhile to interrupt my roadmap, or is it something that I can put at the end of the roadmap as the next thing after we've got to the stages where we're at? So this is one that came up last March, and this was a big interruption that we had. And I'll talk about it. It's all related to our food prep model. So again, that model where we're looking at, how long does it take the restaurant to make food? On this chart, you can see I have the average, the P75s, which are 75th percentile, the 90th percentile of our food prep outputs. So that's how much time we're predicting the restaurant to make food. I know I don't have any real numbers on here because that's some of the stuff that I can't really share out, but it gives the idea of the problem that we had or didn't have at this point. So our food prep was stable. Over time, you'll see that our food prep hasn't really changed. You'll see it a little bit longer on a Friday or Saturday night, a little bit shorter on a Wednesday afternoon, because it's easier for restaurants to churn out a Wednesday afternoon order than a Friday night when they're busy. But then something changed. We saw our food prep go up a lot higher. We saw it increase over time. And what we actually saw first was that our service levels increased or decreased. Our service level, our click to door time, the time or total delivery time increased. When that delivery time increased on a Friday afternoon or Friday in March, first thing Monday morning, people already knew why it happened. We were very quick to get the data to show what happened over the weekend that really hurt our numbers. And what happened was we had the stimulus check that came out in March, did 2 things. One, it gave drivers extra money in their pocket. So they decided, maybe I don't need to work today because I got this check. And then for diners on the other side, it told them, hey, I got extra money in my pocket. Maybe I'll order a nicer dinner or order out for the first time in a while. And those 2 things made a imbalance in our driver supply and our order demand. So that demand and supply curve went off the rails, and we saw a lot more late orders, a lot more, and a lot longer delivery times. So what that ended up doing is we were able to solve that. We're able to say, hey, this is the problem. Let's make our ETAs a little bit longer as we correct for this period of time. But what we didn't pick up right away, and the data showed us, but we weren't following the food prep trend as well, is the food prep continued to increase. And what we saw is those longer delivery times made our model think, hey, we have a problem where we're seeing longer pickup times. That means it must be taking the restaurants longer to make food. We need to start making our model longer and longer and longer. So that was the big problem that we ran into. How did we fix it? The first thing we did was we sized the opportunity. We looked at how many orders were impacted and what does that do to our profitability. So we saw that this was an issue that really impacted a lot of our orders. A lot of restaurants felt this impact, or they didn't feel it because they didn't really know what was happening. We just had later drivers showing up. So we saw that that was hurting our profitability more because we were giving longer ETAs. A longer ETA is less conversion for our diners. We see a diner that will say, hey, it's 40 minutes on Grubhub, it's 30 minutes somewhere else. I'm going to go to somewhere else instead. So it's a big red flag. We had to go solve that big opportunity right away. So we brainstormed solutions and we came up with probably about 5 to 10 solutions that we thought would go fix this problem. And then it came on to me again to evaluate those options. So I was looking at the level of impact, the effort, and the constraints that we had. So first, for the level of impact that we had, it was we could do something very quickly. It would basically solve the problem, but it'd be something that would not be sustainable. And we were able to do that very quickly, and we were able to revert basically our whole food prep data back to where it was before we ran into the issue. But that was a short-term solution, and we knew we had to solve with 2 or 3 other efforts, a more midterm solution where we could keep moving our food prep model forward. So we worked through those and we made sure we lined them up on the roadmap where they'd have the biggest impact right away and be able to be the most sustainable. And then we have a couple more that are still ongoing because there are longer term solutions that we'd be able to solve this from happening again. And we've seen that as we've seen the child tax credit, we've seen very similar spikes in our service levels, but we've seen our ETAs respond positively to those spikes and be able to account for them. So then I took those different options we had. I developed the requirements. I got my business team, my tech team, and my ops team to go start pulling the different things and working on the different parts of the business that I have to make sure that we solved the problem and met those requirements to make sure it wasn't happening again. The last part again is that we tested and evaluated the results. So this was something that was such a big issue, and we wanted to make immediate impact that we didn't do testing the way that I normally like to do testing, where we do very rigorous, we call them switchback tests, where we turn a feature on and off and we measure the results over time to make sure we're making that impact. This was more of a pre-post evaluation because we wanted to make sure, did we get back to normal levels, and did we then hold those normal levels as we went forward. So as you can see, when we measure those results, we've gone back down in our food prep trends, and we're still making continual progress on our food prep model as we go forward. Some things that made this easier or more successful than that really helped was that we had data agility. The data comes to me very quickly. It's something that I'm able to take our data and manipulate it the ways that I want to see the results and aggregate data very easily. And we do that with our reporting tables. We have all this production data, but what really helps me out the most is that I have one table that has our order information. So I can look at by order number, almost every piece of usable data that I need right there in one very long table. So it's easy to aggregate by day or by week or by restaurant type or all these different things. I can aggregate the averages and the percentiles and everything that I need to do to tell the story. And then when I tell the story, I tell it to leadership, and I tell it to my partners, and I get organizational alignment very easily because they trust those reporting tables, and they trust that I can take those reporting tables and quickly churn out a chart or tell a story with that data, that they believe the things that I'm saying, and then they're able to go and give me the green light or trust my authority to go make the changes that we need to make. So that is how at Grubhub we take data, we use it, we have very clean reporting data that we're able to then turn into functional results. One thing I do want to call out is that we are hiring at Grubhub right now. We have plenty of product and tech roles available. So please go to our careers site and see if there's anything that matches your desires, and feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. Thank you for having me. I will check now to see if we have any questions. Doesn't look like there's any questions coming in, so I will end the broadcast here. Thank you, everybody.